Testing, testing.
Hello and welcome to February 15th Parks Commission meeting for the City of Coos Bay. We'll go ahead and do roll call. I don't see anyone online, but we'll start at the end of the table down there.
Lance Knoll, City of Coos Bay.
Greg Hamlet, City of Coos Bay.
Beverly Myers, Commissioner, Parks.
Bill Davis, Parks Commissioner.
Coco Sutton, Parks Commissioner.
Ariane Lyons, Parks Commission.
Jamie Faraday, Parks Commission.
Kurt Bentward, Commissioner.
Jennifer Wersing, City of Coos Bay.
And Amy Edmonds, City of Coos Bay.
Okay. And then I have confirmation from Patty. She wasn't feeling well, so she won't be here. Let's see. I do not see any public comment, so we'll continue on from that. And then we'll move on down to action items. A, review 2024 Spring Street project for bicycle and ped facilities.
So the Parks Commission is new charter, if you will, advisory committee to bicycle access throughout the community and into the parks. And so with that, the City of Coos Bay has designated that Parks Commission as an advisory body, advising and aiding city staff in making the appropriate decisions regarding bike routes throughout the city. As such, staff will be engaging the commission and seeking recommendations from the commission to determine safe and common sense guidance during the design process of road construction and when and where to designate bike lanes for future projects. The City of Coos Bay will be developing plans for a rehabilitation portion of Central Avenue between 11th Street and Ocean Boulevard. It's an estimated 1,000 foot of rehabilitation of a road that has a varying width of anywhere between 45 feet wide of travel path to a narrower travel way of just 34 feet, with the narrowest being between 12th and 13th Street. Per city standard cross sections, a minimum of 36 feet is required to accommodate a safe bike lane on both sides of the roadway, with the varying widths of the roadway and the existing bike path on the north side of Central. Staff is concerned for the safety of the cyclist to install a bike lane that will not meet the minimum width of 6 feet. At this point, staff is recommending that the bike lane not be required through this section of roadway due to space limitations and speed considerations. So, go ahead, Ariana, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to open it up for comment.
So I do know that Eric Clough did send a, did I pronounce his last name correctly? Clough? Sorry. Clough. Yeah. He did send a few questions via email to city staff. And if you'd like, I can go through them, or if you'd like, you can ask the questions, I can respond to Eric's questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. So his first question was more of a comment. This was the first that he's heard about the bike lane involved in this project. Seems like we should have a bit more time to consider technical merits of the situation before being requested to approve staff recommendations not to include a bike lane on this important section of road that connects downtown Coos Bay with the western parts empire of the city. I was working on my responses since I received the email, coming back to it, going out and doing other things. So I'll send my responses. I'll respond to his email, but I've got them drafted. I just wanted to share them with you. So my response to that is that this project is at the infancy of its design. We will be developing a design for the project after the Parks Commission. So one thing that we want to do is we want to go into design with a clear path. And that's why this body is here of being made aware of it now, because we haven't even hired a design engineer yet. So we are just at the infancy of this project. But in order to guide our design engineer, we want to provide them with certain parameters. So that's why you guys are hearing about it now. And as we move forward, we'll develop the plans appropriate for this section of road. Question number 2, I'd like to know more about exactly what is being planned. The staff memo simply says that they do not want to be required to include a bike lane here, the yellow highlighted sections. Does this mean, does that mean leave it as is? So if you scroll down and in your agenda packet to page 3, kind of shows a section that's highlighted in yellow, and that section of roadway is in between 13th and 12th. City staff is only proposing to do the eastbound lane. We're not proposing to do repairs to the entire road width. We're only doing the eastbound lane. 2 years ago, we did the westbound lane, and that westbound lane does include a bike path or a bike lane from 12th going west up along Ocean and carrying it on. So this proposal is only to do the south side or the eastbound traffic lane to rehabilitate that lane. And so that's why we're only in this section. So between 12th and 13th, though, there is an existing bicycle lane that comes down Ocean, disappears between 12th and 13th, reappears at 12th, and then terminates at 11th. And so we have a segmented bicycle lane that goes nowhere. Then at the end, it thrusts the cyclists out onto the roadway. So that's why I'm proposing not, or recommending not putting in a bicycle lane. It's segmented, it's wonky, it's jerky, it's not very conducive. The other big constraint that we have is we have a retaining wall that, as Coco knows, well, I don't know if Coco knows this or not, but it was built as part of a WPA project, I think in 1929.
It's got some stone work behind the Armco barrier.
It does, and it also does have a driveway to a private residence.
Yeah.
So we're constricted in this section of roadway to go wider. We can't go wider because we have this wall, we have a private driveway, it's their only access to the residence. And then in the center, we do have a turn pocket that allows for a left-hand turn onto 12th or into the residence for a couple of these houses in between 12th and 13th. And so to propose a bike lane, a 6-foot wide bike lane, it's just not conducive. So the current plan is to resurface the eastbound lane side of the hill. It's also going to include one ADA ramp, compliant pedestrian ramp, restripe the road, matching the existing patterns. There is currently, like I said, a segmented bicycle path that does not continue through the project. And so that's in the email. His third question, there is an existing striped bike lane in both directions on the west or on the uphill side of the construction. There is no existing bike lane on the east side, the downhill side, but there is. It terminates and starts back up again. Is there a plan for installing any sort of bike lane on the east or the downhill side? So the current striping pattern reflects on both the east and the westbound sides of the road are striped with bike lanes going in the direction of travel. The westbound side of the road has a designated bike lane starting at North 12th and continues on to the west. On the eastbound side, it terminates at 13th or in between 12th and 13th and then picks back up and then terminates again. His fourth question, I'd like to suggest that the city reach out to an experienced engineer designer for potential solutions to this construction problem, or constriction, I'm sorry. My feeling is that with some sort of effort, of a solution can be found that is better than simply not including a bike lane at the constriction. At least there could be installation of signage warning motorists and cyclists that the existing bike lane ends and merge is required. Could be a good location for a prominent sharrows or to be installed on the road. I ride this section of road and a cyclist, the obvious solution is to take the lane. If there is no creative ways to make space for a continuous striped lane, then signage sharrows should be a minimum objective. My response, staff is employing a design engineer for the project. City staff, in an effort to A, include the Parks Commission and the advisory board in the process of a new road development, and B, provide a sound recommendation to the commission based off the existing constraints, both logically and budgetarily. Central Avenue between South 13th and South 12th is topographically challenged to the south with a retaining wall constructed in 1929 that supports the road, with a private driveway on the south side of the roadway abutting the wall, with approximately 1 3/4 to 2 feet of shoulder space on the roadway surface. Furthermore, per figure 9 of page 26 of the TSP, volume 1, this section of road is a type 3 or a level 3, what's the acronym, BLTS,
Traffic stress level, I think, is what they
bicycle
use.
level of stress. And so it's designated as moderate stress, suitable for most observant adults, for moderate traffic speeds. And also, so that's a challenge. We're thrusting a designated bike lane into a non-compliant or non-bike lane area. And then another thing that I did look at, per his suggestion of the Sharrows, per the urban bikeway design guide, Sharrows should be limited to on bicycle boulevards similar to low volumes, traffic calmed, and streets and shared streets with a designated speed of less than 25 miles an hour. The speed limit of Central Avenue is coming down, is 30 miles an hour posted. It's a high volume road. And so with that, I don't know if Sharrows is appropriate place for that marking. Now, I do recognize that cyclists do use this road. They're there, and we do need to come up with maybe some signage that we can do during the design. But at this point, bike lane, no bike lane, stop bike lane, to me is just creating a very confusing situation for a cyclist and a motorist. That's why staff is making the recommendation not to include the bike lane out into the road. We can mark it as such with the current, but I think staff is, we're just cautious about keeping that bicycle lane there and leaving it designated as a bike lane. So that, oh, one more, sorry. Question number 5. It's question number 5. The background of the staff memo states that we'll be developing a plan for the section of roadway. If that is correct, and I assume that there is still time to consult on this bike lane constriction problem before concluding to simply abandon the bike lane here, my vote is that further effort be put into the matter before voting to abandon any sort of bike transportation facility here. So my response is, the plan is starting off point and design will follow. The purpose of this level of this conversation is to create a design that will provide a safe movement for all forms of traffic and transportation.
Okay.
So
I
those
have
are,
a couple comments. Do you want to go first?
I just want to have you sum up what the current, you mentioned it before, but there will be room for at least one bike lane going east, downhill?
no.
Going west, I think, is a, yeah.
So currently, there is a bike lane that starts at 12th. East of 12th, the road, we have 2 lanes going up the hill. They merge just before 11th. So there's no space. Then we pick up a bicycle lane at 12th, and that bicycle lane carries on.
Yeah.
Correct.
And on the way east, there is a current bike lane that does end at, what, 12 or just before 12? Yeah.
So the current bike lane,
Yeah, I know that sign says.
Yes, it does.
the current bike lane comes down the hill
Yeah.
to the retaining wall, and then it literally just terminates, it disappears. And then it picks back up at 12th, headed down the hill, and then terminates at 11. So we have one block really of bicycle lane that's existing.
So there was a discussion at one time to redo the intersection at 11th and Central. Is that still under discussion?
11th and Central?
I don't know that
Yeah.
conversation.
I don't know. I would assume maybe 10th and Central, to
That's
tell
what I
you the
meant,
truth.
So Staff is unaware of
Yeah.
those plans.
I need to listen more and talk less probably at these meetings since I'm the new person, but I did drive out there and take a look at that, and I have ridden around there too. I have a couple of concerns. One is the big picture concern, something Eric mentioned, which is, it would be nice to tie downtown Coos Bay to Empire some way. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of roads to do that on. And actually, in the TSP plan, we have in there little dashed green lines showing that that's a proposed bikeway. But we have that in the plan, but then we say it's not possible to put bike lanes in there. So, I really hope at some point in time we can look at a way to connect downtown Coos Bay and Empire. And unfortunately, this may be one of the few roads to do it on unless you drive behind Mingus Park and come back out in the lighted intersection onto Ocean Boulevard. So that's the big picture concern. I know what you're talking about on the bike lane on the south side of Central, the one that bumps out, because it starts out at the very top. It does say it's striped for a bike lane. Then the stripe gets real close to the Armco barrier, and then it comes back out, and then it's the sign that Jamie says. It says bike lane ends before you get to the busy intersection with 10th Street. Part of my little concern is that right now, people may assume that that's a bike lane until they get to the bump out, and it forces them into the road. And so that comes into play when you're gonna redo the paving or whatever on that side of the lane. I know Eric wants that bike lane to stay in there. At one level I do too, but I worry about leaving a bike lane in there that goes into an Armco barrier and forces people out into the road. So that's a concern as well. And one other big picture item is that, down at the intersection with 10th Street Central, it comes in with 2 lanes. And people that get in the southernmost lane either gonna turn onto 10th or they're gonna go faster than hell to try to beat whoever is in the right-hand lane to get up the hill. And I've often asked myself, why do we do that? Why don't we make that southern lane a turn-only lane? It's for those people that want to turn towards Blossom Gulch on 10th Street. And why don't we put in some lane markers before that and telling people that it's a turn-only lane? And if you did that, you would get the bike lane on the north side of that street all the way down to 10th. So I know that's not part of this project, but I'm just laying that kernel, that seed there to think, at some point in the future, maybe to think about that, because it might make bike traffic a little bit easier on that road. So just a thought.
I think one of my main thoughts is we seem to have an awful lot of square footage reserved for turning lanes to nowhere. So there's an incredible amount of turning lane space that's used on Central and some of our other main access roads for a user group of 1 to 4 people, when we have bike lanes that are utilized by many more people.
Yeah.
So I understand why, in one wisdom, that we shrunk that turn, the main turn, down to 1 lane and had everyone merge here at one time, I don't know, 15 years ago. But then we have this central turning lane that goes between 11th and the alley on 13th, so 13th and 12th, that serves who?
The
Yeah.
alleyway that, I'm sorry.
Well, it's,
The
I mean, the
alley-
center turning lane that goes between 13th and 12th serves very few people.
Turn lane serves a couple purposes. One is for each individual residence, an opportunity to turn out of the main volume of traffic, to safely stop and make their turn as oncoming traffic is coming along Central. And then as we get closer to 12th, we have a turn pocket there for vehicles to turn left up onto 12th. And so that's probably why. It was put in, it was for those turn movements, to safely stop the vehicles and give them a refuge area if they're gonna be making a left-hand turn.
Which is rare.
That's a design.
Yeah,
I believe the turns on the center lanes and left turns, that's a standard that ODOT started years ago with studies of accidents and incidents with people stopping in a lane that's normally considered the fast lane. And so I think that that kind of carried over into residential because of accidents and incidents. Is that correct?
well, yeah, this is also an arterial road. This is not a residential road. Although there are residents on it, but it is an arterial and as such is treated as an arterial. The high volume of traffic, we have to have those lanes to have movement of vehicles. This road is constrained, it bottlenecks at a particular location. Then it opens back up, and then it goes back down, and then we have a turn pocket to make a right-hand turn onto 10th on Central. So that's probably why that bike lane terminates there, because if not, you're putting a bicyclist and a vehicle in the exact same lane, trying to do two different movements. And if there was going to be a total reconstruction of the road, that might be looked at. And who knows, as we go down the path of looking at future designs of roads, and that's part of this advisory committee, and that's why we're going to be bringing these projects to this committee, is to say, hey, this is what we're proposing. And I don't think every recommendation I'm going to give the board here is going to be a not to, but I think on this one, and although it's the first one, unfortunately, the staff recommendation is not to, for the reasons that I put out there.
I forgot I had another comment too, and then to pick up on the chair's comment that is 10th, let me just ask you, first off, is 10th Street considered an arterial street?
10th, I
Yeah,
believe it
going up
is.
the hill?
Yeah, I believe
Doesn't
that's
have a turn lane, lots of residence houses, the turn to the left.
Once again, space constraints, road was built long before those requirements might have been there.
Yeah.
Plots, whatever those situations might have been.
Yeah, but the other thing I was going to tell you is, in looking at that and writing at that, I'm not sure that the bike lanes on either side of Central right now meet the minimum width requirement.
I don't think they do either.
Yeah, I think, I know the one on the south side is way too narrow, and I swear to God, the one on the right side is probably not more than 3 feet. And I don't think it meets 5 or 6 feet or whatever the requirement is, so.
Is it possible to make a proposal before you eliminate all the bike lanes when you're doing that, to have the design person look at something that could be signage-wise that might warn people if they choose to ride their bicycle there? Because bicycles can share the road with cars. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I think, I'm not proposing, I can't kick a bike off the road. And I'm just not proposing putting in a lane that starts, stops, stops. Yeah, you're in a lane, now you're not in a lane. There's just a lot of mixed messages happening. And I don't know if we can, market safely. We can always put up some signage and we can talk to our design team to include signage that says, hey, bicyclists on the road, or whatever the situation, whatever is compliant with the MUTCD as far as signage goes, the most appropriate.
And I believe that wall that you're talking about, that is not WPA, that wasn't started until 33 and 34, so anything
Maybe
built
it's
in the
39,
20s.
not 29.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
do know that it was a WPA wall.
Okay,
because it
yeah,
was done
so
at
it'd
the
have to
same
be
time.
from 33 to
Yeah.
40.
It was done at the same time that 12th Street wall was put
Okay,
in.
yeah.
When the structural guy came through and did the analysis on it, like
Yeah,
15
so
years
that's
ago.
on here, I think in.
Yeah, I think I said 29, but I think it's
Yeah,
39.
so, okay, thank you.
I'll correct it before I send the email.
Do the bike lanes always have to be on the side?
I'm sorry?
Do the bike lanes always have to be on the side?
Do the bike lanes always have to be on the side, is the question to me? Yeah. I mean, I won't say with 100% certainty. I suppose if you had some kind of buffered bike lane, you could put it in the middle. But if it's not like that, I think there would probably have to be on the side. And like I said, the unfortunate part is I really do think we want to encourage people using other modes of transportation other than just vehicles, walking and riding, and it would be nice to tie Empire and downtown Coos Bay. And it's just unfortunately a bottleneck, and I don't know if there's an easy way to deal with it. The difficulty will be is that you may take the bike lanes out, or you may take the one out on the south when you repave. People will probably still ride it.
So I do think that Eric has touched on something, and I think that as we move forward and we grow and develop as a body regarding the bicycle aspect of this, he does talk about creative ways. And I think that as we move forward, I think we could find creative routes to tie. Maybe not the nearest point A to point B route, but maybe a different, more safer route, maybe a more scenic route. It depends on how we sell it. But I do think that we can look for those opportunities in the future. With the bottleneck and the constraints that we see here, that's why staff is making the recommendation not to market, because once again, you're absolutely right, Kurt. Just to the west of the 12th, 13th bottleneck or the retaining wall, that's narrow, and it gets narrower and narrower as you get closer and closer to that area. Another good thing is that right there we do have a crosswalk that if a cyclist was to abandon the bike lane or abandon their bicycle, they could walk across the street and take it down safely to probably beyond 10th. The reason I say that is because there's no bike lane between 11th and 10th. And so maybe that's just a future safer path. But I think as this body continues to move forward, I think we can come up with some more creative ways of tying Empire to the downtown area that may, just like I said, may not be as the crow flies, but maybe as the bee buzzes.
So do we need to take a vote on
We
the
do.
staff's recommendation?
Any further commissioner comments? Please note that Commissioner Carmen had joined us in the beginning of this conversation, so he is here. Carmen, do you have any comments?
First comment, just to remind everybody to use their microphones to make sure it's on when you speak.
All right.
I missed the actual staff recommendation. Could you just restate it?
Yeah, thank you, Carmen. This is Greg. The action request is staff is recommending that the bike lane not be required through this section of roadway due to space limitations and speed considerations.
But between which point and which point?
The, basically, from there, so let me back up a little bit. The bike lane starts at Ocean. It's real narrow. It terminates at, just
13th.
13th, picks back up at 12th, and then terminates at 11th. Due to those constraints and that bottleneck at the retaining wall, the narrow, already marked bike path that's there is just constraint-wise, logistically, it's wonky, and that's why staff is recommending not to include it in this particular project.
So just abandoning it?
Yes, and for those reasons that I said.
So is it causing problems right now?
No, I don't think it's causing, not that I'm aware of. I did not pull crash data on that section of roadway, but it does, a cyclist coming down Ocean onto Central has to vacate what little bike lane is there, travel 3/4 of a block in the roadway,
Yeah.
then
I
tie
heard
back
all
into
that.
that.
Yeah, I heard all that. Yeah, I get that. Are you wanting to like paint over it and abandon it completely? Is that what you're saying?
So this project was going to resurface Central on the eastbound lane from Ocean to 11th. So we'll be resurfacing that and then also adding an ADA pedestrian ramp at 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the on-again, off-again bicycle lane that can't meet the minimum width of 6 foot, and the termination of that bicycle lane at 11th, that's why staff is making the recommendation not to include it.
So you're gonna bring it and just end it at the corner at Ocean Boulevard?
I think the terminus would be at the crosswalk there.
At 13th?
Yeah, right above 13th, right to the west of 13th.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like, that's a tough one. I hate to abandon anything. I've ridden that particular section so many times, and yeah, it does push you off into that space, but people are stopped at the corner there, like Central and, I don't know what you want, Central and Ocean Boulevard. They stop there, they see you, you travel down basically with them at the same speed. You get to 13th, and it kind of, or you know, between 13th and 12th, it pinches off, and then, I don't know, it seems like everybody's kind of being aware of you at that point. I appreciate that, even that little bit, and I guess my suggestion would be to just pull the Sharrows in for just that section where it does bump in and merge for just a second. That would be my recommendation, but just because I appreciate having that little bit of shoulder right there. So is it legal to go across the crosswalk and then go down the bike lane in the opposite direction? I don't think it is it?
I think it's legal to get off your bicycle, push it across the crosswalk, and take it down the sidewalk, push it down the sidewalk. I don't know about the other legalities as far as riding your bicycle on the wrong side of the road or riding your bicycle on a sidewalk. I think I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I don't believe you can go the wrong way in that bike lane, but I mean, forcing people to get off their bike and then just walk down the hill doesn't make much sense to me. But I guess, you know, I'm a little bit more brave with my bike. I don't like that. I don't like having to do that. I want to open up bicycling to as many people as possible so that they feel safe and accessible to do these things. But I do kind of consider my bike as like a vehicle, and so I treat it as such. And, you know, merging into the traffic and just going for a little bit and then going back off to the side of the road and catching the bike lane for the last little bit. Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It seems like it's just like you're bringing it over to one more block of bike lane and then it ends again. I don't know. I think personally I would like to sit and get creative with it a little bit more before we abandon it. But I'm down to hear what everybody else has to say.
Jamie?
It makes sense to me that if there's a beginning of you're going to keep the first section of bike path after the stop sign on Ocean down Central.
I think with the space constraints and the fact that we have a bicycle lane that does not meet a minimum width requirement,
Oh, that one to the crosswalk does not?
it really doesn't.
Could it be?
We could definitely look at that, because ideally what I'd like to do is bring that bicycle traffic to the crosswalk. To Carmen's question regarding the Sharrows and putting it out there, like I said earlier, the low volume, this is a high volume road. Speed limit is posted at 30 miles an hour. Sharrows are suggested or not to exceed 25 miles an hour or less than 25 miles an hour. So Carmen's absolutely right. There's a stop sign there. People do stop, but people do also get on the gas. Some people don't hit the stop sign at all. I don't know what driving habits of folks are, but I do think that, whatever somebody might feel comfortable about going out into that traffic, that's their comfort level. And I think every bicycle can be on the road. Doesn't make it safe, it's just they have the right to share the road. I get that. But I think if we're gonna mark something, if we're gonna state something, and we're not doing it in a manner that is compliant with the requirements, just.
And the
I-
speed, I know the speed limit going uphill is 35?
I think it's posted at 30, but I know downhill, I looked at downhill, because that's the lane I was
Right.
concerned with.
And it is at what, 30?
It's posted at 30.
Could it be brought down to a sharrow? Because once you get at the bottom of the hill, you're into city 25 mile an hour zone anyway.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where that transition takes place. I know that the section of road that we're proposing the project in is 30 miles an hour.
Well, just thinking, listening to Carmen's and other discussions about how coming down the hill, you've got people aware that there is a bike lane of some sort, and then it goes away, and then it comes back. It's confusing, it's dangerous. If we had, here's a bike lane to begin with, sharrows after that to down into the zone where we can get to the 25 mile an hour zone, seems like sharrows could be an answer, but I'm not.
Jennifer?
So I've been listening to this good discussion for the last 30 minutes, and Greg or myself, we're not transportation engineers. And I support Greg. I don't support constructing facilities that don't meet minimum standards. And what I see here is if we want a facility that meets minimum standards, we're gonna have to lose that turning lane. But why don't we get a transportation engineer to look at this, have a small level of effort, and then maybe come back and present before he kicks off and does major design? Because we don't want to do rework. And I'm not talking about a full-on transportation study. Just get a professional that does this for a living to maybe take a look at this and then provide a little recommendations memo for us. Because this is a tough one for your first one. It really is.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's a great suggestion.
And we're not the only community with constrained areas, so maybe there's some solutions out there. Coco?
It sounds like we have two things that that expert would look at. One of them is to reduce the speed in that area that's already identified as being constrained. It is what it is. It's not going to get wider. And then also looking at ways to incorporate the safe standards for the bicycle. Would that be correct?
Yeah. And
So,
Go ahead.
And seeing what the cost of that is. Sometimes you can't do a change for speed without an extensive traffic study.
yeah, we can totally have her look at both of those items, but just because you reduce a speed limit doesn't mean that vehicles follow that suggestion. They're going to do what they feel is comfortable. That's one thing that this transportation engineer has taught me. But we can definitely, if we want to add that onto the scope, we can have her look at it. Where does it reduce down to 25 miles an hour? Greg, do you know?
I think
Right.
it's past 10th, or maybe right around the 9th area. I'm not exactly 100% sure.
Because it's
I
a
can find
stop
out.
sign.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
logical place, but let's,
Mm-hmm.
we can add those two scopes, and I think we can get a small level of
Yeah.
effort for her to come back and then present.
We'll do Kurt and then Carmen.
I was just going to say, when we do take a look at this, you know, if we eliminate the lane all the way on the south side of Central, you're still going to have the problem of people coming down Ocean Boulevard in the bike lane stopping. And so when the engineer or whoever looks at all this, if that's an option, saying, well, we can't put in a bike lane on the south side of Central because it doesn't meet the state requirements for width or whatever, and the city will be liable for an accident because we've done that, then we have to make sure that we also figure out what are we doing with those people that are riding their bike in the regular bike lane on Ocean Boulevard till they get that corner with Central. I think that needs to be a consideration. I don't know all the bike rules. I do think that bikes can use that crosswalk. You know, from working on the stuff to look at Sharrows to come up from Front Street to Mingus Park, I do think there's a separate bike lane width when we have bikes going both ways. And the other difficulty with that concept, of course, is when they get down to 10th and they're going against traffic into an intersection. And a lot of places have special bike signage, lights for that, and the whole 9 yards. So that's another problem with going down that way. And when I was looking at other stuff, even though I thought it was illegal to write on sidewalks, it is legal in the state of Oregon to write on sidewalks.
Nice.
So, there you go. But I like the idea of maybe not making a decision today, have someone take a look at that who knows these traffic things and say, what can we do, with the hope of maximizing bicycle traffic on Central to tie in downtown Coos Bay and Empire and deal with some of these problems that we've got. So that would be my suggestion too.
Thank you. Carmen?
Yeah, I guess, I'm looking at the map over here, and this central turning lane, I mean, it's present all the way until like just past 11th Street. And I live on 11th Street, so I turn left going down the hill, going east onto 11th on a pretty regular basis, and it's not even wide enough to accommodate a car. So you're kind of like straddling the central line between a turning lane and, the regular lane of travel. And at that point, it's like, why even have this wasted space? And it feels like there's a good portion of this central turning lane that could be either reworked for some of these people that are turning left as they're going west up the hill. I'm a traffic engineer, but it seems like at 13th, we could almost go on a road diet, bring that turning lane, start bringing it down, and actually bump out the bike lane a little bit and actually bring it down a little bit farther. That would be my hope. I do really like, and as Jamie was saying, I was thinking the exact same thing. Bringing it down to 25, just bringing that whole speed diet up the hill. One of the things that has been an issue is coming down Ocean Boulevard, and when you go onto Central, we have all those little rumble strips and lights and all that stuff. It's because people bomb down that and they're not thinking and they're going fast. And so I think, starting like this awareness of, hey, you're in the Central District here, you need to slow down. I think it's a great idea to bring that down. So I would like to propose that is something that I'm interested in. I'm not sure how the rest of the Parks Commission feels, but, reducing the speed up the hill a little bit to help with the, align with Sharrows and maybe seeing how we can rework the turn lane to fit in an actual bike lane makes a lot of sense to me. And they might say, there's a minimum amount that's not actually great, and it might be 3 feet, it might be, I don't know what it is, but they'll have more information. I don't think I have all the details that I need, so I don't think I'm able to make a decision at this point.
Thank you, Carmen. I think my consensus is hearing that we're going to have a quick glance with a traffic engineer that knows way more about space and planning than we do and has experienced congestion in many other zones. Have them take a look at it and then bring it back to the commission for review. So I appreciate everybody's comment and effort. And Greg, I appreciate all of your hard work on this as well.
My pleasure. We'll make that happen.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on down to item 3B, Mingus Park Master Plan.
And for the agenda packet, that's on page 1020.
You can scroll to that. So at the February 16th, 2023 Parks Commission meeting, a motion was presented and carried by the commission to create a Mingus Park Master Plan Subcommittee. The subcommittee is presenting the draft master plan to the commission for review. At this point, the only action that's requested is the staff is requesting that the commission review and discuss the draft plan. At this point, staff will turn it over to the subcommittee, Coco Sutton and Bill.
Coco?
So
Thank you.
real quick, if I may. So in the packet, the agenda packet, there is a draft Mingus Park Master Plan. However, Coco did email a revised draft
Only a few pages.
master plan with some changes on it, and so we'll be putting that up on the the big screens. And we did email that to the commissioners earlier today.
Thank you. The purpose of having a master plan for your park is, number one, to guide how you're going to manage that park. Number two, as we go down the road of looking for gaps to fill in funding for our parks for maintenance and maintaining what we have, it is required that you show some kind of master plan or some kind of plan that meets the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. That state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan is what's behind the money that comes from the federal government and lottery dollars that you can apply for through the city or through other entities for your recreation needs. The updates that were made dated 2/14/2024 were to include more photos because a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a very complex park. Most parks are graded by a set plan with the Park and Recreation Association, I think, of the U.S. And Mingus Park, because of its age and because of its topography, the two biggest issues historically are the drainage. Just like roads, we were logging in Timber Town and things just happened. Secondly is vandalism. Vandalism is nothing new. The records from this park going back to World War II, believe it or not, show that when you have recreation areas here, there is vandalism. So I would like to start with the introduction. We are trying to make sure our master plans follow a certain look. We have our master plan for all our parks, so if we can go to the next page, we're basically looking at a statement that shows that we have a master plan. And is that the one dated 2/14? Okay. What we're looking for, if you look at those notes down there, are different appendices that are going to be referred to. So that's the information. I don't know if you can read it up there, but basically your master plan, it says statement of acknowledgement and compatibility with SCORP. That's what this is. So the stuff that's highlighted there is at the bottom where it says outdoor recreation is important to Oregonians and provides many benefits. Overcrowding and pressures on resources are increasing. Access, opportunity, and participation are still inequitable. Those are the three core points of the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan and pretty much have been for the last plan and the new plan that's coming online. So with that in mind, a little statement there, the Mingus Park Master Plan is a focused document to assist with directing scarce resources of funds, that's your city budget, labor and materials to park enhancement that will provide the maximum benefit to the diverse recreation needs and access of the city of Coos Bay, visitors, and neighboring communities now and in the future. Outdoor recreation opportunities have and will continue to be an essential part of our city, county, and state spirit, health, and wellness. This plan will help ensure that any rehabilitation, enhancement, or maintenance of resources in the park will create safe, diverse, and equitable access to recreational opportunities now and in the future, in spite of limited resources and an increasing demand for innovative services. The key words there are safe, number one. Anything you have, we've talked about recreational immunity. If you take a resource that's natural and you do anything to it, you do not have recreational immunity by claiming that you can't maintain it. So that needs to be, I think, clearly stated. Secondly, when we talk about diverse and equitable, a lot of people think that, I wonder what you mean by diversity. It's not just a group of people, it's a group of abilities, agilities, needs, everything from do you have an ADA plan? Do you have restrooms that are accessible for people with their needs? The state of Oregon has things like Alley's Law. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. So there's all these different rules that have to do with elements that are in your park, from restrooms to playgrounds to water surfaces to, whether it's natural grasslands, etc. So we wanted to just have a statement that focuses that we are looking at now where we are, what we want to do for enhancing and maintaining, and we're keeping in mind those things in yellow, which will be eliminated. So I'm asking for you to look at that and see if you think that covers or if you want to do any wordsmithing on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. Only because we spent much longer on the bikes than I anticipated. You have some key elements in here, and I want to make sure that the commission has time to review and provide any additional commentary. So my understanding is everywhere where there's a highlight is an area of wanting additional comment and information.
Correct. So if you've looked over, the 2/14/2024 has not changed. The city in the past had a plan where they laid out the elements in Mingus Park into asset areas. So starting at the top of West 14th and West Park Boulevard, West Park Roadway, that's the upper reaches. That's where your drainage starts. So if you would like to today, with time constraints, I can walk you through this. We're not going to get through this quickly. I'm going to let you know that right now. Most of the pages in this are appendices, because when you talk about maintenance, you're not talking about just what you see. You're talking about what's underneath. So this park is in the middle of an urban area. It's constrained by what's around it. You have sidewalks, you have curbs, you have roadways, you have underground utilities, you have above-ground utilities, you have things that are city streetlights, you have pathway lights, you have multiple surfaces, you have memorial things that are put into the ground and the ways, you have trees that are memorials, you have a Japanese garden, you have a 1940 historic property, but that by state and federal law, you're not supposed to even dig a post hole in that area unless you have a clearance from the state Historic Preservation Office. So when I say it's complex, we're not going to get through this quickly, but what I want to make sure of is that all the areas that we've identified, which are scout cabin, playground areas, natural amphitheaters, picnic shelters, a skate park, upper tennis courts, lower tennis courts, 3 restroom facilities, one that's not open to the public unless you rent, which is Mingus Park Scout Cabin, and 2 that are offline right now due to maintenance and end of life. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly vandalism and,
Right.
yeah, mostly just
End of
vandalism
life,
is
right.
why they're
And
closed.
so I don't know if you want to look through the elements first of what we're needing, but the photos are just to give you an overview. The elements are how do you want to present. So the first page is going to be this statement of how you're using this document and how it fits into the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. We've already done our own survey monkeys and individual outreach at the farmers market. So all the information that we got back from our community is in line with the comments that you're seeing for the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. There's not a lot of difference when you sort out some of the areas that people think are in your purvey, like the port offices, which are not. So that statement you can think about as we scroll to the next page. This is basically copied the first 3 paragraphs from the master plan. It's the history of Mingus Park. The main difference is the middle paragraph. One comment that was made is if you look over the information in the past, there's no mention of the scout cabin. And you're going to see a statement after you get through the first few pages that most people don't even know the scout cabin is there, and there's confusion on who is the owner of the scout cabin. There's a long history on it. I'm not going to get into that. So the first part is the land mass, what elements are there, what is here, and what will maintain assets at Mingus Park. And then it says Mingus Park, if you'll go to the next page where it says Mingus Park predominant challenges, I'm sorry, I know they're side by side, but if we can blow up the previous page on the right where it says Mingus Park predominant challenges. So these 3 headers, that statement there is something that I had to think about what are our challenges? And I looked back at the Survey Monkeys. I looked at information on the second point, which is safe park perception and comprehensive drainage management. Those are the two nuts that I got out of everything. The second point of safe park perception, all of that is just a quote from a study, and it's state of California, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there you go. Safe park perceptions, this is key. Dispelling unsafe perceptions by addressing and mitigating appearances and or actions taking place in the park. Safe appearances can be undermined by unaddressed vandalism, human and domestic animal waste, littering, alcohol, drugs, public sex, and lack of routine maintenance. That's where that came from, and there's been lots of studies on that. We know those are the two elements in our park. It's not as bad as other places, but all the responses that we got back 2 years ago alluded to the fact that a lot of people perceive that the parks are not safe to go in. And those are the key reasons that people have done studies on. How you want to word that, but you have to come up with what the predominant challenges are in your park, because obviously most of your assets that people want in the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan are not available or accessible, or they're offline. So anyway, go ahead to the next section, please. So I'm just going to run through this and then we can get to, okay, so these maps that you see are how everything's sectioned. You're going to see a map that was put together by a software program that the city of Coos Bay has, and it's great because it just gives you a little block showing different elements that were put in the park. And then when you go to the next, so this is event map 1, and then when you go to the next page, it tells you here's the different elements that are in that event place. And you'll notice that all of them will have things like walking paths, trash receptacles, lighting, footpaths, things like that. Things that you don't normally think of, but when you look at the power bills that the city has, and I did get a chance to look at those recently, they're all metered on one comprehensive bill that they gave us, but you have a lot of elements on power bills that increase your costs, and you have to do maintenance on them. The city recently did some upgrades on LED lighting for their street lights, but that didn't impact all the footpaths and the lights that are in the park. You'll see that yellow highlight down below. That's where, once you look over those draft elements, those are things that we're looking for once we get that nailed down, that you will refer to other pages in the back. So when you go to the next few pages, you're going to see pictures, and these pictures were taken by Bill Davis, who's one of our commissioners, at pretty much the height of when you get the water runoff. These were taken in March of last year. And that's good because you can see all of the things that we're going to talk about when we get to the predominant challenges. So going through those pictures, those are pictures taken of that particular area. The next event, map 2, I believe is the playground area that's being moved. Is that correct?
That appears to be the
Yeah.
lower, the
So
southern area of the
this
park.
map, when you go to the next page, you're going to see the elements that match. And then it says other. Then you're going to see the inserts for the appendixes. Now go to the next section, you're going to see the photos. Now, you'll notice that there's curbing that we've talked about before. So again, when I talk about this being a complex park, you have these benches of areas where water's coming down, and people have over, I think it's fair to say, almost a century now, done things to it to address the water. And so all of that is something that has to be maintenanced. It could be slip, trip, and fall. Somebody could identify it as keeping people in a wheelchair or walker from accessing. Go to the next page, please. And we're just going to look at all the signage. There's an incredible amount of signage in this park. Some of them are interpretive signs. Some of them are signs for people who over the decades have put money into resources that you have, and memorials. If you go to the next page, please. These are looking at the water standing in some of these areas. Next page, please. This is the playground area that I believe we have a Judith Ann Meyer grant that we're going to be changing and putting that back to natural, is that correct?
Judith and Mogan, yes.
Mogan, okay. So this is still the condition on the ground, that has not been changed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so again, things will change, but this is the conditions on the ground last year, and my understanding is that when I looked at that playground, that has not changed. So you're at the bottom, in that map area, you're kind of at the bottom, not the complete bottom of runoff and drainage. Next pictures, please. Again, more of the water, and you'll notice that you've got hardscape. So whenever you have water and you have a hardscape, you're gonna have buckling. There's a lot of new concepts about not doing so much asphalt in park, but that's what you have. And underneath a lot of that is wiring, water and sewer lines, things like that. Next page, please. You'll notice the garbage cans, receptacles, power poles, and the Sani cans. That's the only restrooms available in Mingus Park right now. And next, this is the third event map area. That's the baseball, softball fields. And again, that's across the street, but you can see we have urban streets that surround this. Next slide, please. These are the elements that have been identified in that area map. So you have the softball, you have the type of surfaces that you see, a restroom that's currently offline, you have a tennis court that's not in the best of condition, you have fencing, so there's lots of different types of fencing, and just in that area, there's an interesting rock thing that butts up against the grades from the parking. So if you go to the next picture, so in here, you'll see a concession building, restrooms, different kinds of curbing. Next picture, please. Transitionals between the second picture, if you can make that view larger, there's interesting, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a mosaic, I guess is the best description. And the reason I bring this up is when you start wanting to upgrade your restrooms, there's going to be a question on your ADA parking. So the area that you're looking at now is near one of the restrooms, and the type of parking surfaces and multi-surfaces you have there are very mosaic, so it's hard to have a maintenance plan for them. Anyway, next slide, please. This is information on the disc golf course. Now, we did get some new information. You'll see why it says verify this information. We did get some new pictures that have been added to this. Most of the information, as is credited on the bottom on the disc golf course, was taken from an organization that promotes disc golf courses. So that information was taken from there. There's some insert questions on that, and then if you get to the next page, you'll see this is from the city. This is the city's information on how you play that course. But when you get to the next page, you'll see the pictures. So in this park, you've seen open spaces, elements, and now you see this disc golf course, which is in a tree area, tree canopy. It's got hard surfaces, paved surfaces for your, I'm a golfer, so tee boxes or whatever you want to call them. Go to the next page, please. These are recent pictures that we got in because once again, you get to the parking spaces that people are getting into. Striping, keeping the asphalt up, drainage, and signage. Next page, please. One of the things in all of the areas that you'll see is information about vegetation and hazard trees. If you have surfaces and trees and people coming in to recreate, it's your responsibility to look at the type of species you have. Are they going to be like Russian olives where they're going to fall over after so many years and hit somebody's car? So those are considerations when you're looking at your tree maintenance plan. Next slide, please. This area is an event map 5, and you'll see the yellow highlight at the top. This is the Japanese garden. Now, there was not one of those maps on Choshi Gardens. I have seen the original plans from Crow and Clay. There's a comment on the bottom if we want to include that in the appendices. So these are elements that are in there, taken from the city website, but there wasn't a plan picture that I could put in there that I could find. Next slide. These are photos of the elements again. So you have a bridge that I know that red, was that Morning Song Bridge? What's that bridge? Yeah, I think it's called, well, I think it's called the Morning Song Bridge or something according to the information that I saw. And that bridge was part of a grant, I believe, in 2002 or 2004. There was some local government grants that were made to upgrade that bridge and do some work on it, and also one of the restrooms by the ball field. You have lots of water and different types of foot spaces and walking spaces. Next slide. This is the Scout Cabin event map, so that's up at the upper reaches of your park. And there's an on-site host. So this is one of 2 parks, I believe, in your system that have hosts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No, 3. We have
Oh.
3
Boat
hosts. We have one at John Toppin's, one at East Side Boat Ramp,
Okay,
and
the
one
boat
at
ramp.
the Boy
Okay.
Scout Cabin.
So but as far as recreation park, you have an on-site host, but the host is only responsible, in my understanding, for that site. So unlike some parks where a host goes and cleans the bathrooms and stuff, that's not the case with this. It's specific to that property. Next slide, please. This is information and elements that we found that are related to the Scout Cabin. And the Scout Cabin, because of the history of it and the people that were involved in building it, was very complex. It's the only property you have in your park system, which is your parks are day-use parks, you don't have overnight, that allows a rental before you can access the property. But there is also a resolution from 1998 that allows scouting groups, and that's not just Scouts BSA, which was previously Boy and Girl Scouts, but in the past it was Campfire and some other youth groups, to use the park with no user fee when they started user fees in 1998. So we had to walk through that. So that's elements that we found here. Next page, please. This is just some pictures of Scout Cabin because so many people have never been in it or didn't know what it was. Next slide, please. Again, elements on this where the host site is, and that's an upper bench that's had additional rock work done in the 80s. And then when you go to the next slide, you'll see pictures of propane. We had some hazard trees incidents in 2021. Next page. This is we're calling it Event Site 7. And there are tennis courts that some people didn't realize are up above the Scout Cabin. That's if you come off west or north, it was West 14th and North 14th, and it comes to West Park Boulevard. This is a set of tennis courts that have a very large parking lot. They have lights, they have a big fence around it, and then it goes down a public road, and that takes you down past the Scout Cabin through residential neighborhoods around the backside of the pond and the drainage. Next slide, please. These are some pictures of the surfaces and things. I know there's been a lot of requests for pickleball and things like that as we look at our parks. But again, getting the deeds to these properties, because all of these deeds may have restrictions or endowments on them. And before we do too much to them, just like we found out with the Scout Cabin, there's a lot of research that we have to do. Next slide, please. These are all the appendices. There was talk when we talked about memorial trees, memorial benches, memorial plaques. When people donate money for your parks in the past, you want to honor and acknowledge their thoughtfulness. But unfortunately, because this is a lower slump area, some of the vegetation and trees and then some of the memorials are now in a decaying situation because of their placement. So we'll just kind of spend a few minutes going through. This is the trees. Here's some of the interpretive signs, the tree board information if you want trees removed, because that's got to be part of your park plan, is maintaining hazard trees. Approved tree list We had that discussion in the past about, does that apply? These are the tree lists that approved trees that were for the city streetscapes. How do they apply to this park? Then we have the Choshi Gardens, which is very specific, has a very specific plan. We have landscape architect's plans and how that's being maintained. So you can go through that, and that was courtesy, I believe, of Bev with all those. This is the Mingus Park markers. So the city does have a map with markers of memorials in here. So if you scroll through, you'll see there's varying types. Some of them are for individuals, for events, for donations, for work that someone put in. Those are the things that get you in your open meetings, a lot of people coming in if you're not maintaining them or you're wanting to change them out. There is a Facebook page on Friends of Mingus Park, it's called, and somebody was commenting on the lighthouse and why that's, not being cared for. So keep going through, and I think that's the last is these. So again, when I look at a master plan, I'm looking at how can I identify what I have. How can I make a management plan when your FTE is one, or in a seasonal staff of whatever your FTE is? How can I make a comprehensive plan, looking at the SCORP, looking at feedback from the city, and hitting all the elements and things so that you can prioritize what you want done? And because of what I just laid out for you in topography and what's in there, this was the best way I could come up with. So this is the layout. And the question is, do you have a better recommendation for the layout would be number one. And number two, how do you want to assess the elements? Because in a park, when you talk about lighting, water, sewer, surfaces, things like that, that's not in the normal public works, correct? That's specific to the park that it's in.
Correct.
So that's the best way I could see at pulling everything in that's come before this group that I'm aware of. And I just want to make sure, is this representative of how you think Mingus Park is laid out and the elements before you look at how you're going to prioritize what you do? Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. I appreciate you and Bill and the subcommittee and Bev for providing information and going through all of this. I think overall, I think it's excellent layout. It makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to break the park up into component pieces and to evaluate each of those pieces there. So unless the commission has any issues with the format or the layout, I think I would just task the commission for doing a deep dive into the content and seeing if there's anything that they would like to modify or change.
And nothing was put in a ranking order, so the elements are just there. So they're nothing to do with the ranking. It's if we're missing any components. Because in the past, like in our master plan, the scout cabin's not even on there. And it's the thing that's going to cause the most consideration moving forward with anything on it because of the age of the facility. So anything that's over 45 years, you start getting into state historic preservation issues. And when you have something, as this park did with the Work Projects Administration or the CCC, those cause you things that you have to go through. And this park has elements of all of those things that are on the state historic properties inventory. It's just that most of them have disappeared.
It's true. So I think we don't need any motions on this. I would like to task the commission for doing a full review and then responding to Coco with any items that they feel that are missing out of this element. Then, given the time, I would ask for any additional commissioner comments, or Greg, if you'd like to have a comment, and then we'll wrap this up.
I don't have any additional comments to the work that Coco and Bill have done. They've done a great job of gathering all this information and laying it out in a manner in which I think the commission can easily take a look at and just deep dive into it and provide some level of review and maybe offer up some more information, or maybe propose some edits, whatever that might be. But I do appreciate the work that Coco and Bill have put into this. It's been a monumental task, and they've done a great job, so thank you on that.
Thank you, Greg. Any other additional commissioner comments on this or in general before we wrap? No?
There is one other item on the agenda.
There is,
I'd
and,
like to pin that for next time, given time.
okay, does that work for you, Greg?
It was just an update of the Adopt a Park subcommittee, the Adopt a Park pilot program, or the AAPPP subcommittee. That was all it was just an update from that, and I'm fine with adding it to the next agenda item,
Okay.
or next agenda.
Perfect.
I do want to say that we've pushed that 3 times now, but
Yes.
it sunsets in May. So in April, decisions will need to be made. So what I'd prefer to do is mail out just a bullet point thing, and then the commissioners will have time to review it before the next meeting, because there are decisions that need to be made, and they're basically 3. You have a program, you extend a pilot, or you terminate it in light of something better, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Coco. So, and then on the agenda for next month, can we put Adopt a Park at the top of the agenda? So we'll make sure that we get to it. So I appreciate everyone today. I appreciate the conversation and the decorum that we have to communicate a lot of different things. So I appreciate that as well. Barring any other comments, I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Carmen. I'm just not going to touch that.